It is really hard to get a job as a developer. Even when we're in a great economy and everything seems to be going pretty well for most developers, it's still a very time consuming and difficult process to go through to find a job. And today in 2024, it's really, really hard to get a job. Even if you're a seasoned developer, it can be difficult to find a company that's going to give you the compensation and the stuff to do that you really want to do. And if it's hard for senior developers to find jobs, you know it's really difficult for junior developers to find jobs. Now, I've talked to a lot of junior developers over the last few months, and I've heard a lot of stories. I've read a lot of stories of junior developers on LinkedIn and Facebook and other places, and I've heard all the frustration and the angst that is in the world right now when it comes to junior developers trying to find a job. Now, there are many reasons why it's difficult for junior developers to find a job, and it's not all on you. However, I've also seen a lot of junior developers that seem to just be kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again, just applying for a job and applying for another job and applying for a 300th job. And they just kind of seem to keep doing the same thing over and over again. So today, I want to give you 5 steps that are going to help you kind of narrow down your focus and really refine the way that you're going about looking for a job. And then at the end, I want to share with you kind of my story and show you some of how I did that on my journey. So let's dive in. Hey, junior devs, Dev Mentor Dave here, helping you bridge the gap from learning to code to launching a successful career. And part of launching a successful career really is figuring out how to manage your job search. Now, I'll be honest, I could probably talk for a long time about most of these 5 steps and probably other things, but if you'd like to learn more about one of the 5 steps that I'm going to give you today, leave a comment down in the comments below and let me know, and I'll make another video kind of going into more detail about that specific subject. Now, this first step is probably the most important step, and if you don't do this, it's going to be really hard to do the other 5 steps. But I'll be honest with you, it's probably also the most difficult step to perform because it requires evaluating yourself. So step number 1 is recognize your point of failure. Now, this is going to take time. It's going to take effort for you to take a step back from just sending out another application, filling out another form. Take a step back and really evaluate what it is that you're doing. What steps are you taking to find a job? What is it about your process, or what is it about the way that you're interviewing, or what is it about you, what you know, that is keeping you from getting that next job? Now, I understand sometimes you may not know what those things are, especially if a company doesn't give you any feedback or doesn't really tell you why you don't fit within their organization. But there are a lot of things that you can at least take a few minutes and sit down and think through your process, think through what you're doing, and see if you can figure out what are those points of failure. More than likely, you've at least got 1, 2, maybe even 3 things that you could really say, you know, I could do that better. Let me give you a few examples. First of all, you could be just applying for the wrong positions. If you're not careful, you could just be sending out your resumes to all these different jobs, and you may not be reading them quite as closely as you should be. And maybe you're just applying for a lot of things that you're really not qualified for. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that I think you should apply for things that you don't think you're qualified for, to try to, push yourself to grow in your journey. But especially if it's your first job, you probably want to make sure you meet the requirements as much as you possibly can. Maybe another point of failure for you is just simply knowledge. Maybe you know what the requirements are and you know a little bit about those subjects, but you're really not at a place where you could take your knowledge and put that into a real world experience. Maybe one of your points of failure is just your communication skills. You have a hard time when you're in that interview process, whether that's on the phone or maybe via a video call or in person. You just have a hard time communicating the things that you want to communicate. Along with that one often comes just a lack of confidence in general. And that could be a point of failure in your process. If employers are looking at you and they're not seeing someone who feels confident in what they do know and communicating what they do know effectively, that could be a point of failure. Now, those are just a few examples. There are probably many other points of failure that could be happening in your particular journey, but you need to stop sending out resumes, stop filling out forms, and take some time to reflect and figure out what are some things that either I'm not doing well or I'm not doing well enough, or maybe I'm not even doing them at all. So you need to recognize your points of failure. And if you don't recognize your points of failure, you're going to probably sit there and think that everybody's just against you and nobody wants to hire you and nobody likes junior devs or nobody likes you in particular. And more than likely, most of that's probably not true. There's a very good chance you just have some things that you need to change, and you need to be honest with yourself. And maybe that means asking somebody else to help you walk through that process, to help you really figure out what those failure points are. Okay, so the second step is you need to determine whether you need to grow or whether you need to pivot. And this is where understanding those failure points really comes into play. See, if your failure points have more to do with what you're trying to apply for and whether or not that matches your skill set, then you know, hey, maybe I need to pivot a little bit. Or if you're looking at what you're applying for and you're seeing that there's very few opportunities there might be more opportunities over here, you might need to pivot the direction that you're going. Or maybe you might think that your failure points have to do more with your personality, your ability to communicate, or even just your knowledge of a particular subject that's going to be necessary to get that job. In those cases, you probably are going to need to find a way to grow your skills. So you need to determine what action needs to be taken. Not only what are my failure points, but what's the next step, the action that needs to be taken. Do I need to pivot? Do I need to make a change, or do I just need to grow? Do I need to dig down deeper and put more work into this? That's why if you don't take time to really be honest and figure out what those failure points are, you won't know whether you need to grow or whether you need to pivot. And more than likely, you'll spend most of your time just trying to grow when maybe you need to pivot. Or maybe you'll spend your time trying to pivot when maybe you just need to grow. You need to figure out what the problem points are so that you know how to effectively change. But when you do change, step number 3, make small changes. First of all, you have to make changes, all right? When I say make small changes, I mean you have to make changes. You cannot keep doing the same thing you've been doing over and over and over again and expect it to just automatically work someday. You have to take stock of what you're doing and figure out what needs to change and actually make changes. But there's a word there that's really important, and that is small. Don't just do a drastic overhaul and do something completely different. If you do that, you don't know what actually was the fix. Instead, you should make small incremental changes. Maybe it starts with changing the format of your resume, changing the things on your resume that you're specifically wanting to highlight. Maybe it's just changing the way that you talk about yourself. Maybe you actually write out a script and talk about how you're going to talk about your journey to get to where you are today. But don't just make a massive overhaul of your plan and your process. Make tiny changes, because if you make tiny changes, you can tell what things are helping and what things are not helping. Plus, let's just be honest. It takes less time and it's easier to make small changes. And if you think about your job search as a journey, as something that's going to take time, and if you plan for that, and if you think about your process going through that as something that's going to be iterative, it's going to be something that changes and needs to mature over time. If you consider it that way, then making those small changes will just be a part of the process. And eventually, you're going to hit on the things that work for you. Okay, so step number 4 is adjust your goals and expectations. One of the reasons why junior developers are having such a hard time right now getting a job is that they're frustrated. You've either been told that you should get a job pretty quickly after whatever training you had, or you just kind of expected that you'd be able to get into the job market, and now it's been 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years since you've graduated from boot camp or since you really started the process and you still don't have a job. If you're just getting into the development world, you need to realize that it's probably going to take some time for you to get that first job. It's going to take some time for you to learn the things that you need to learn. You need to adjust your goals and your expectations. You need to adjust your goals so that you're setting goals that really are attainable, that actually match what's actually happening in the world around us right now. And you need to set expectations that are probably a little bit further out. You need to set expectations that you're probably not going to get hired at that first job. So adjust your goals. Maybe you have a goal right now that says, I'm going to apply to X number of jobs per week. Well, maybe you should take that down a little bit and really focus more on the type of job that you're going for. Maybe focus more on crafting your resume and crafting how you interview for that specific job. Maybe you have certain expectations of what it's going to look like when you get that first job when it comes to pay, or what it looks like with how long it's going to take to get that first job. Maybe you just have expectations about how the interview will go, and it's a little bit rougher than you thought it would be. Well, we need to be careful not to just assume that other people are making our lives harder. We should assume that that's just the way that it is, and we need to adjust our goals and our expectations to work within the framework of our current economy and our current marketplace for junior developers. Step number 5 is probably the one that most people don't even think about, but I think it's incredibly important. And step 5 is celebrate micro wins. What do I mean by that? Well, obviously you're going to celebrate when you get that first job. You're probably going to shout really loud and, maybe hopefully don't break anything, but you're going to be really excited when you get that first job, when you get that first opportunity to really dive into, use everything that you've been learning in a real world environment. But there's lots of things that you can enjoy, that you can celebrate along the way in that process. Celebrate when you've learned something and you feel like you've actually been able to put that into practice. Celebrate when you feel like you've had a good interview, and maybe celebrate when you get a second interview for those companies that are really annoying and have multiple levels of interviews. Celebrate when you walk away from an interview and you feel confident in how you presented yourself, regardless of the outcome. If you like the way that you presented yourself, celebrate that, record that, write it down. When I say celebrate the micro wins, I mean make a record of it, celebrate it, write it down so that you can go back later on in your journey and you can see where you started and all the different little wins along the way, because that will keep you motivated. So as you're writing that down, send a text or make a phone call or put a post up on social media and tell others about this micro win. Sure, it may mean nothing to them, but it's a chance for you to celebrate, and your friends are going to celebrate with you. When you're excited about your progress, others will be excited about your progress. And when everybody's excited about your progress, you feel good. Even when everything's not quite working out the way that you want it to, even when it's still going to be another 6 months or a year, and it's still going to take a lot more time of studying and growing and learning. If you're celebrating those micro wins, if you have other people around you who are celebrating those micro wins with you, it's going to be an enjoyable process. Of course, if you want another group of people to celebrate micro wins with, you can always join the Dev Mentor Dave Discord channel in the link in the description of this video, and we'd love to celebrate with you every time you get a win. Now, I want to take just a few minutes and show you how, when I implemented these steps in my process, both back in 2016 and even today, the job market really became a lot more clear to me, and it was able to help me focus exactly what I wanted to do. And by doing that, I was able to weed out a lot of extra work when it came to finding a job. Now, granted, this was during markets that were much easier for developers to get a job. And at some point in here, I was no longer a junior developer. So that is still going to be a difficult road for you. And I want to help you in that journey. But I want you to kind of see what that product looks like. Okay, so this is a spreadsheet that I've kept since 2016 when I was first let go of my first job as a developer. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I had never been out in the job market before. And I just wanted to show you a few things about this. Obviously, there's some more information that I've got hidden here. So this isn't all of my tracking information. But I just wanted to show you, I had basically 25, and this is not all of the leads, but I wanted you just to notice a lot of things here. So here I was declined for not knowing a specific framework. This was just closed. This company actually preferred somebody that had a technical degree, which I didn't have. And then just, we're pursuing other candidates, excuses here. But so those were opportunities that, where I was actually declined from. So I've been down this road. I know what you're dealing with. Here is a bunch of ones that I submitted resumes to and never actually heard anything back from anybody. So that was fun. Here's some interviews that I had that I was waiting feedback from and didn't hear anything. Had a code challenge on a couple of these that I was working on. Had an interview that was set that never actually took place because I got an offer finally. But I ended up actually getting 2 offers at this time and accepted this offer here. But I also want to show you something else. If you look at the roles, so I've got LAMP dev, front end dev, UI developer, web developer, full stack developer, front end UI dev, senior business analyst. I'm not exactly sure why. Oh, I remember that was a company that I did some work for, and they asked me to apply for that for some reason. PHP dev, front end dev. So lots of kind of different roles that I was applying for because I was just trying to get anything. And that kind of hurt me and wasted a lot of time in that process the first time I went through that. So then in 2018, when I was looking again, you'll notice something interesting about the types of jobs that I was looking for. Almost every one of these is front-end developer. Now, one of this was a WordPress contract that somebody was offering. I think it was even on like Craigslist or something like that. But notice how the focus was much more on one specific thing. I knew what I was wanting to work in, and so that allowed me to pivot and change the way that I wrote my resume. It allowed me to look for specific jobs at that point. And you'll notice we had fewer jobs. Now, there's still a lot because I was still pretty green, especially on the front end side, but fewer jobs than 2016 that were on my list. All right, so 26 or 25 down to 18. So we lost about 7 jobs on that list. And thankfully, I did get hired at one point. But again, we had no offer, declined interviews, low pay at one point for one position. Here's being submitted for interviews, but never actually getting an interview, waiting for feedback. And finally, I got one offer, and so I took that offer. And then in 2020, this is even more telling. After I had really spent 4 years in the development world in real jobs, I was able to really then begin to narrow my focus of what I was actually looking for. And at this point, I was looking really more for either a front-end developer role or a PHP specific role. I was open to a couple of different things, but I was a lot more picky in the jobs that I was pursuing. And as you put these steps into practice, you're going to find that you begin to get much more picky about the jobs that you're willing to apply for. Now, obviously, part of the pickiness probably had to do with the pay. So, because I was looking for increased pay at each one of these. But you'll notice that as I began to focus what I was doing and tweak what I was doing, the opportunities that I was focusing on were fewer and they were more specific to exactly what I wanted to do. And of course, that brings me to 2021. In this specific search, I only had 6 companies that I was looking at, and very, very small number of companies, very specific role. I was looking to be a lead developer or a senior level developer. I had very specific goals for my finances. Everything was just much more refined. And part of that is just coming with experience. And part of that is taking these 5 steps and really putting them into practice. Now, you may notice here that this job that I accepted actually was a consultant position, but it had the things that I was looking for in a senior developer position and pay scale. Well, hopefully these 5 steps are helpful to you in kind of reframing the way that you're thinking about your job search. If so, if you'd click the like button, I'd really appreciate it. It just lets YouTube know, hey, people are interested in this content and they're finding it helpful. And if you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon to be notified the next time I upload a video or the next time I go live, which right now is every Saturday at 10 a.m. Central United States time. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.